Today is the 29th of August, and this is the 40th night. We are talking on the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas. Now we come to Sutta 99, Subha Sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now on that occasion, the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, was staying at the residence of a certain householder in Savatthi for some business or other. Then the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, asked the householder in whose residence he was staying, "Householder, I have heard that Savatthi is not devoid of arahants. What recluse or Brahmin may we go to today to pay our respects?" "Noble sir, this Blessed One is living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. You may go to pay your respects to that Blessed One, Venerable sir." Then, having assented to the householder, the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and asked the Blessed One, "Master Gotama, the Brahmins say this: the householder is accomplishing the true way, the Dhamma that is wholesome. The one gone forth into homelessness is not accomplishing the true way, the Dhamma that is wholesome. What does Master Gotama say about this?" "Here, student, I am one who speaks after making an analysis. I do not speak one-sidedly. I do not praise the wrong way of practice on the part either of a householder or one gone forth. For whether it be a householder or one gone forth, one who has entered on the wrong way of practice by reason of his wrong way of practice is not accomplishing the true way, the Dhamma that is wholesome. I praise the right way of practice on the part either of a householder or one gone forth. For whether it be a householder or one gone forth, one who has entered on the right way of practice by reason of his right way of practice is accomplishing the true way, the Dhamma that is wholesome." Stop here for a moment. So here, this Brahmin is saying the householder's life is better. It accords with the Dhamma, and is accomplishing the true way, and not the one gone forth. Maybe many people, if they are told to give their opinion on this, then they will say either yes or no. But the Buddha says he's not one who sides with any one side. He says that whether it's a householder or one gone forth, he is practicing the wrong way, then he has entered the wrong way. He's not accomplishing the true way, the Dhamma that is wholesome. But whether it be a householder or one gone forth, if he has entered on the right way of practice, then he is accomplishing the true way according to Dhamma. Master Gotama, the Brahmins say this: since the work of the household life involves a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, and great undertakings, it is of great fruit. Since the work of those gone forth involves a small amount of activity, small functions, small engagements, and small undertakings, it is of small fruit. What does Master Gotama say about this? This is, stop for a moment, this is what a lot of worldly people think. One who renounces is a lazy fellow. Depends on people for his livelihood, whereas a lay person has to work so hard. And the Buddha said, "Here too, student, I am one who speaks after making an analysis. I do not speak one-sidedly. There is work involving a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, and great undertakings, which, when it fails, is of small fruit. There is work involving a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, and great undertakings, which, when it succeeds, is of great fruit. There is work involving a small amount of activity, small functions, small engagements, and small undertakings, which, when it fails, is of small fruit. There is work involving a small amount of activity, small functions, small engagements, and small undertakings, which, when it succeeds, is of great fruit. And what, student, is that work involving a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, etc., which, when it fails, is of small fruit? Agriculture is that work involving a great deal of activity, etc., which, when it fails, is of small fruit. And what, student, is that work involving a great deal of activity, which, when it succeeds, is of great fruit? Agriculture, again, is that work involving a great deal of activity, which, when it succeeds, is of great fruit. And what, student, is that work involving a small amount of activity, which, when it fails, is of small fruit? Trade is that work involving a small amount of activity, which, when it fails, is of small fruit. And what, student, is that work involving a small amount of activity, which, when it succeeds, is of great fruit? Trade, again, is that work involving a small amount of activity, which, when it succeeds, is of great fruit. Just as agriculture, student, is work that involves a great deal of activity, but is of small fruit when it fails, so the work of the household life involves a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, and great undertakings, but is of small fruit when it fails. Just as agriculture is work that involves a great deal of activity and is of great fruit when it succeeds, so the work of the household life involves a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, and great undertakings, and is of great fruit when it succeeds. Just as trade is work that involves a small amount of activity and is of small fruit when it fails, so the work of those gone forth involves a small amount of activity, small functions, small engagements, and small undertakings, and is of small fruit when it fails. Just as trade is work that involves a small amount of activity, but is of great fruit when it succeeds, so the work of those gone forth involves a small amount of activity, small functions, small engagements, and small undertakings, but is of great fruit when it succeeds. So here the Buddha makes it clear what is important is whether it succeeds or it fails. It doesn't matter whether it involves a great deal of activity or small amount of activity. Master Gotama, the Brahmins prescribe 5 things for the performance of merit for accomplishing the wholesome. If it is not troublesome for you, student, please state to this assembly the 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit for accomplishing the wholesome. It is not troublesome for me, Master Gotama, when such venerable ones as yourself and others are sitting in the assembly. Then state them, student. Master Gotama, truth is the first thing that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit for accomplishing the wholesome. Asceticism is the second thing. Celibacy is the third. Study is the fourth thing. Generosity is the fifth thing that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit for accomplishing the wholesome. These are the 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit for accomplishing the wholesome. What does Master Gotama say about this? How then, student, among the Brahmins, is there even a single Brahmin who says this? I declare the result of these 5 things, having realized it myself with direct knowledge. No, Master Gotama. How then, student, among the Brahmins, is there even a single teacher or teacher's teacher back to the 7th generation of teachers who says thus, I declare the result of these 5 things, having realized it myself with direct knowledge? No, Master Gotama. How then, student, the ancient Brahmin seers, the creators of the hymns, composers of the hymns, whose ancient hymns that were formerly chanted, uttered, and compiled, the Brahmins nowadays still chant and repeat, repeating what was spoken, reciting what was recited. That is, Ataka, Vamaka, Vamadeva, Vesamita, Yamatagi, Angirasa, Bharadvaja, Vaseta, Kasapa, and Bagu. Did even these ancient Brahmin seers say thus, we declare the results of these 5 things, having realized it ourselves with direct knowledge? No, Master Gotama. So, student, it seems that among the Brahmins, there is not even a single Brahmin who says thus, I declare the result of these 5 things, having realized it myself with direct knowledge. And among the Brahmins there there is not even a single teacher or single teacher's teacher back to the 7th generation of teachers who says thus, I declare the result of these 5 things, having realized it myself with direct knowledge. And the ancient Brahmin seers, creators of the hymns, composers of the hymns, even these ancient Brahmin seers did not say thus. We declare the result of these 5 things, having realized it ourselves with direct knowledge. Suppose there were a file of blind men, each in touch with the next. The first one does not see, the middle one does not see, the last one does not see. So too, student, in regard to their statement, the Brahmins seem to be like a file of blind men. The first one does not see, the middle one does not see, the last one does not see. When this was said, the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, was angry and displeased with the simile of the file of blind men. And he reviled, disparaged, and censured the Blessed One, saying the recluse Gotama will be worsted. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha again say that these Brahmins, they say these things, but they don't have direct knowledge. That means they haven't directly seen and known it like an enlightened person. Then he said to the Blessed One, Master Gotama, the Brahmin Pokarasati of the Upamanya clan, Lord of the Subhaga grove, says thus, some recluses and Brahmins here claim superhuman states, distinctions in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones or Aryans. But what they say turns out to be ridiculous. It turns out to be mere words, empty and hollow. For how could a human being know or see or realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones? That is impossible. Stop here for a moment. So being angry with the Buddha, he knows that the Buddha claims to have attained superhuman states. And the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples claim also knowledge and vision worthy of the Aryans. So he says, how can this be possible? How then, student, does the Brahmin Pokarasati understand the minds of all recluses and Brahmins, having encompassed them with his own mind? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, so you say the Pokarasati claims that these monks, recluses and Brahmins claim to have attained superhuman states and Aryan stages of knowledge and vision, but it's ridiculous. They could not have attained all these things. Impossible to have attained these things. And he says, does Pokarasati can read the minds of recluses and Brahmins and certify that they have not attained all these? And he said, Master Gotama, the Brahmin Pokarasati does not even understand the mind of his slave woman Punika, having encompassed it with his own mind. So how could he understand thus the minds of all recluses and Brahmins? Student, suppose there were a man born blind who could not see dark and light forms, who could not see blue, yellow, red or pink forms, who could not see what was even and uneven, who could not see the stars or the sun and the moon. He might say thus, there are no dark and light forms, and no one who sees dark and light forms. There are no blue, yellow, red or pink forms, and no one who sees blue, red, yellow or pink forms. There is nothing even and uneven, and no one who sees anything even and uneven. There are no stars and no sun and moon, and no one who sees stars and sun and moon. I do not know these, I do not see these. Therefore these do not exist. Speaking thus, student, would he be speaking rightly? No, Master Gotama. There are dark and light forms, and those who see dark and light forms, etc. There are stars and sun and moon, and those who see stars and sun and moon. Saying, I do not know these, I do not see these, therefore these do not exist, he would not be speaking rightly. So too, student, the Brahmin Pokarasati is blind and visionless, that he could know or see or realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. This is impossible. What do you think, student? What is better for those well-to-do Brahmins of Kosala, such as the Brahmin Chanki, the Brahmin Taruka, the Brahmin Pokarasati, the Brahmin Janusoni, or your father, the Brahmin Todeya, that the statements they make accord with worldly convention or flaunt worldly convention? That they accord with worldly convention, Master Gotama. What is better for them? That the statements they make be thoughtful or thoughtless? thoughtful, Master Gotama. What is better for them? That they make their statements after reflecting or without reflecting? After reflecting, Master Gotama. What is better for them? That the statements they make be beneficial or unbeneficial? Beneficial, Master Gotama. What do you think, student? If that is so, did the statement made by the Brahmin Pokrasati accord with worldly convention or flaunt worldly convention? He flaunted worldly convention, Master Gotama. Was the statement made thoughtful or thoughtless? Thoughtless, Master Gotama. Was the statement made after reflecting or without reflecting? Without reflecting, Master Gotama. Was the statement made beneficial or unbeneficial? Unbeneficial, Master Gotama. Stop here for a moment. So here you see the Buddha used such a good example of a blind man who could not see dark and light forms, who could not see colors and all that, and he claims there's no such things and no such people who can see all these things. So the Buddha used this example to say the same with this Pokrasati. Now there are these 5 hindrances, student. What are the 5? The hindrance of sensual desire, the hindrance of ill will, the hindrance of sloth and torpor, the hindrance of restlessness and remorse, and the hindrance of doubt. That these are the 5 hindrances. The Brahmin Pokrasati is obstructed, hindered, blocked, and enveloped by these 5 hindrances. That he could know or see or realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. This is impossible. Now there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure, student. What are the 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. Sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. The Brahmin Pokrasati is tied to these 5 chords of sensual pleasure, infatuated with them and utterly committed to them. He enjoys them without seeing the danger in them or understanding the escape from them. That he could know or see or realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. This is impossible. Stop here for a moment. So this statement is very important. The Buddha says, this Pokrasati, he is obstructed and enveloped by the 5 hindrances. So it is because of that, it is impossible for him to know or see or realize an Aryan state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the Aryans. It is utterly impossible. And also this second part, that he indulges in sensual pleasure and infatuated with sensual pleasure. Such a person is impossible to realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the Aryans. This is very important because nowadays, for example, people teaching vipassana meditation and saying that jhana is not necessary, but we know from the suttas that without attaining jhana, you cannot get rid of the 5 hindrances. So here is very clear. Without getting rid of the 5 hindrances, it's absolutely impossible to get any Aryan state at all. So a lot of people, they never study the suttas and they just follow what is taught by other teachers. That's why the Buddha said, after he is gone, we take the suttas and the Vinaya as our teacher, not any other monk. Also, this last part, that a person who is infatuated with sensual pleasure, committed to sensual pleasure, enjoying sensual pleasure, he could attain an Aryan state, also impossible. This contradicts the Mahayana teachings like Vimalakirti Sutra, where they say this Bodhisattva, Vimalakirti, is a very worldly man. He enjoys all the social life and all that, and yet he has a state higher than Sariputta, higher than any Arahant, wisdom higher than the Arahants and all that. This is totally impossible. What do you think, student? Which of these 2 fires would have a better flame, color and radiance, a fire that might burn independent on fuel such as grass and wood, or a fire that might burn independent of fuel such as grass and wood. If it were possible, Master Gotama, for a fire to burn independent of fuel such as grass and wood, that fire would have a better flame, color and radiance. I'll stop here for a moment. Just now I mentioned about this people teaching Vipassana and without the jhanas are impossible to attain Aryan stages. Not only that, even scholars, if scholars teach without attaining this getting rid of these 5 hindrances, they also cannot see clearly. That's why a lot of scholars, because they don't see clearly, they rely on, for example, the commentaries, they rely on the Abhidhamma, and they rely on later books, which sometimes, very often, contradicts the suttas. So that's why the Buddha says in the Digha Nikaya, Sutta 29, that his teachings, his suttas are perfect and complete, and that we should not rely on any other teaching, only on the Buddha's words in the suttas and the Vinaya. So if somebody teaches without getting rid of the 5 hindrances, he won't be able to see so clearly. It is impossible, student, it cannot happen that a fire could burn independent of fuel such as grass or wood, except through the exercise of supernormal power. Like the fire that burns dependent on fuel such as grass and wood, I say, is the delight that is dependent on the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. Like the fire that burns independent of fuel such as grass and wood, I say, is the delight that is apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states. And what, student, is the delight that is apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states? Here, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. This is the delight apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states. Again, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, a monk enters upon and abides in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind without applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of concentration. This too is a delight apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha says that the delight that is dependent on the 5 chords of sensual pleasure is just like ordinary fire that burns dependent on fuel such as grass and wood. This delight dependent on the 5 chords of sensual pleasure is the delight that arises when somebody enjoys the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. When you enjoy the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, you get a certain delight, but that is worldly delight. Then the other one, the delight that arises when a person enters the first and the second jhana, that is not worldly. That is not worldly. That is just like the Buddha says, similar to the fire that burns independent of fuel such as grass and wood. So this delight that is obtained in jhana is apart from sensual pleasures, apart from worldly pleasures. Of those 5 things, student, that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, which of the 5 do they prescribe as the most fruitful for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome? Of those 5 things, Master Gotama, that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, they prescribe generosity as the most fruitful for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome. What do you think, student? Here a Brahmin might be holding a great sacrifice, and 2 other Brahmins would go there thinking to take part in the great sacrifice. One Brahmin among them would think, Oh, that I might get the best seat, the best water, the best alms food in the refectory, that no other Brahmin might get the best seat, best water, best alms food in the refectory. And it is possible that the other Brahmin, not that Brahmin, gets the best seat, best water, best alms food in the refectory. Thinking about this, the first Brahmin might become angry and displeased. What kind of result do the Brahmins prescribe for this? Master Gotama, Brahmins do not give gifts in such a way, thinking, let the others become angry and displeased because of this. Rather, Brahmins give gifts motivated by compassion. That being so, student, isn't this the Brahmin's sixth basis for the performance of merit? That is the motive of compassion. That being so, Master Gotama, this is the Brahmin's sixth basis for the performance of merit. That is the motive of compassion. Those 5 things, student, that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome. Where do you often see those 5 things, among householders or among those gone forth? Those 5 things, Master Gotama, that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, I often see among those gone forth, seldom among householders. For the householder has a great deal of activity, great functions, great engagements, and great undertakings. He does not constantly and invariably speak the truth, practice asceticism, observe celibacy, engage in study, or engage in generosity. But one gone forth has a small amount of activity, small functions, small engagements, and small undertakings. He constantly and invariably speaks the truth, practices asceticism, observes celibacy, engages in study, and engages in generosity. Thus, those 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, I often see among those gone forth, seldom among householders. I'll stop here for a moment. So here you see, he's contradicting what he said earlier. Because earlier he said the householder is accomplishing the true way, the Dhamma that is wholesome, not the one gone forth. But here he says the one gone forth is the one who practices these wholesome things, like speaking the truth. Let me see. Speaking the truth, asceticism, celibacy, study, and generosity. So the Buddha here did not point out, but actually he's contradicting what he said earlier. Those 5 things, student, that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, I call equipment of the mind. That is, for developing a mind that is without hostility and without ill will. Here, student, a monk is a speaker of truth, thinking, I am a speaker of truth. He gains inspiration in the meaning, gains inspiration in the Dhamma, gains gladness connected with the Dhamma. It is that gladness connected with the wholesome that I call an equipment of the mind. Here, student, a monk is an ascetic, one who is celibate, one who engages in study, one who engages in generosity. Thinking, I am one who engages in generosity, he gains inspiration in the meaning, gains inspiration in the Dhamma, gains gladness connected with the Dhamma. It is that gladness connected with the wholesome that I call an equipment of the mind. Thus, those 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, I call equipment of the mind. That is, for developing a mind that is without hostility and without ill will. When this was said, the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, said to the Blessed One, Master Gotama, I have heard that the recluse Gotama knows the path to the company of Brahma. Stop here for a moment. So here earlier you see, he is saying what the Brahmins believe and trying to make the point that what the Brahmins say is correct. But now he is asking the Buddha. He wants to learn from the Buddha now. Now he stopped debating with the Buddha. When this was said, the Brahmin, so he is asking the Buddha to teach him the path to the company of Brahma. What do you think, student? Is the village of Nalakara near here, not far from here? Yes, sir. The village of Nalakara is near here, not far from here. What do you think, student? Suppose there was a man born and raised in the village of Nalakara, and as soon as he had left Nalakara, they asked him about the path to the village. Would that man be slow or hesitant in answering? No, Master Gotama. Why is that? Because that man has been born and raised in Nalakara and is well acquainted with all the paths to the village. Still, a man born and raised in the village of Nalakara might be slow or hesitant in answering when asked about the path to the village. But Tathagata, when asked about the Brahma world or the way leading to the Brahma world, would never be slow or hesitant in answering. I understand Brahma, student, and I understand the Brahma world, and I understand the way leading to the Brahma world, and I understand how one should practice to reappear in the Brahma world. Master Gotama, I have heard that the recluse Gotama teaches the path to the company of Brahma. It would be good if Master Gotama would teach me the path to the company of Brahma. Then, student, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, sir, he replied. So you see here, the Buddha makes him request twice. Then only the Buddha will teach him. The Blessed One said, what, student, is the path to the company of Brahma? Here a monk abides, pervading 1/4 with the mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around, and everywhere. And to all as to himself, he abides, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. When the liberation by mind of loving kindness is developed in this way, no limiting action remains there, none persists. Just as a vigorous trumpeter could make himself heard without difficulty in the 4 quarters, so too, when the liberation by mind of loving kindness is developed in this way, no limiting action remains there, none persists there. This is the path to the company of Brahma. Again, the monk provides, pervading 1/4 with a mind imbued with compassion, with a mind imbued with joy, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the 4th quarter. So above, below, around, and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he abides, pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. When the liberation by mind of equanimity is developed in this way, no limiting action remains there, none persists there. Just as a vigorous trumpeter could make himself heard without difficulty in the 4 quarters, so too, when the liberation by mind of equanimity is developed in this way, no limiting action remains there, none persists there. This too is the path to the company of Brahma. When this was said, the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent Master Gotama. Master Gotama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overturned, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. Let Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. And now, Master Gotama, we depart. We are busy and have much to do. Now is the time, student, to do as you think fit. Then the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he departed. Stop here for a moment. So here you see, after all this teaching by the Buddha, he took refuge in the Triple Gem. That means he became a Buddhist, follower of the Buddha. Now on that occasion, the Brahmin Janusoni was driving out of Savatthi in the middle of the day in an all-white chariot drawn by white mares. This Janusoni is another famous and rich Brahmin. He saw the Brahmin student Subha, Todeya's son, coming in the distance and asked him, Now where is Master Bharadvaja coming from in the middle of the day? Sir, I am coming from the presence of the recluse Gotama. What does Master Bharadvaja think of the recluse Gotama's lucidity of wisdom? He is wise, is he not? Sir, who am I to know the recluse Gotama's lucidity of wisdom? One would surely have to be his equal to know the recluse Gotama's lucidity of wisdom. Master Bharadvaja praises the recluse Gotama with high praise indeed. Sir, who am I to praise the recluse Gotama? The recluse Gotama is praised by the praised as the best among gods and humans. Sir, those 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for the performance of merit, for accomplishing the wholesome, the recluse Gotama calls equipment of the mind, that is, for developing a mind that is without hostility and without ill will. When this was said, the Brahmin Janusoni got down from his all-white chariot drawn by white mares, and after arranging his upper robe on one shoulder, he extended his hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One and uttered this exclamation: "It is a gain for King Pasenadi of Kosala. It's a great gain for King Pasenadi of Kosala that the Tathagata Arahan Sammasambuddha lives in his realm." That's the end of the sutta. So later, this Brahmin Janusoni also became a follower of the Buddha. Now we come to the next sutta, number 100, Sangarava Sutta, to Sangarava. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was wandering in the Kosalan country with a large sangha of monks. Now on that occasion, a Brahmin woman named Dhananjani was staying at Chandala Kappa, having full confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. At one time she stumbled, and on recovering her balance exclaimed 3 times, "Honor to the Blessed One, Arahan Sammasambuddha." That means Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa, 3 times. At the time, there was a Brahmin student named Sangarava staying at Chandala Kappa. He was a master of the 3 Vedas with their vocabularies, liturgy, phonology and etymology, and the histories as the 5th. Skilled in philology and grammar, he was fully versed in natural philosophy and in the marks of the great man. Having heard the Brahmin woman Dhananjani utter those words, he said to her, "This Brahmin woman Dhananjani must be disgraced and degraded, since when there are Brahmins around, she praises that bald-pated recluse." Stop here for a moment. So you see, because of jealousy, a lot of Brahmins, they didn't like the Buddha. Buddha was famous, had a lot of followers. Even some of the Brahmins left their religion to become Buddhists under the Buddha, and many of them also renounced. So this fellow Sangarava is a very learned Brahmin. This stock description of a learned Brahmin, a master of the 3 Vedas with their vocabularies, etc. And this woman said, "My dear sir, you do not know the virtue and wisdom of the Blessed One. If you knew that Blessed One's virtue and wisdom, my dear sir, you would never think of abusing and reviling him. Then, madam, inform me when the recluse Gotama comes to Chandala Kappa." "Yes, dear sir," the Brahmin woman Dhananjani replied. Then, after wandering by stages in the Kosalan country, the Blessed One eventually arrived at Chandala Kappa. There in Chandala Kappa, the Blessed One lived in the mango grove belonging to the Brahmins of the Todeya clan. The Brahmin woman Dhananjani heard that the Blessed One had arrived. So she went to the Brahmin student Sangarava and told him, "My dear sir, the Blessed One has arrived in Chandala Kappa and is living here in Chandala Kappa in the mango grove belonging to the Brahmins of the Todeya clan. Now is the time, dear sir, to do as you think fit." "Yes, madam," he replied. Then he went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said, "Master Gotama, there are some recluses and Brahmins who claim to teach the fundamentals of the holy life after having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge here and now. Where among these recluses and Brahmins does Master Gotama stand?" Stop here for a moment. So this fellow is quite impudent. Has got the gall to ask the Buddha. Some recluses and Brahmins claim they have reach the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge here and now. That means they claim to become enlightened. So, are you enlightened? He's asking the Buddha. The Buddha said, "Bharadvaja, I say that there is a diversity among those recluses and Brahmins who claim to teach the fundamentals of the holy life. after having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge here and now. There are some recluses and Brahmins who are traditionalists, who on the basis of oral tradition claim to teach the fundamentals of the holy life, after having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge here and now. Such are the Brahmins of the three Vedas. There are some recluses and Brahmins who, entirely on the basis of mere faith, claim to teach the fundamentals of the holy life, after having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. Such are the reasoners and investigators. There are some recluses and Brahmins who, having directly known the Dhamma for themselves, among things not heard before, claim to teach the fundamentals of the holy life, after having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. I, Bharadvaja, am one of those recluses and Brahmins who, having directly known the Dhamma for themselves, among things not heard before, claim to teach the fundamentals of the holy life, after having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, among those ascetics, recluses who claim to be enlightened, some are traditionalists. On the basis of oral tradition, they claim to have perfected themselves. The second one is based on faith, and they claim to have perfected the holy life. And the third one, they directly know for themselves. So the Buddha says he is in the third category, having directly known the Dhamma, he claims enlightenment. As to how I am one of those recluses and Brahmins, that may be understood in the following way. Here, Bharadvaja, before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I considered thus: household life is crowded and dusty. Life gone forth is wide open. It is not easy while living in a home to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe and go forth from the home life into homelessness. Later, Bharadvaja was still young. So here, the following description is found as in Sutta 26, where the Buddha said, in front of his parents, as they wept, he left the home life, shaved off his hair, cut off his hair, put on the yellow robe, and left the home. Then after that, there's a description of the three similes, as in Sutta 36, about the three types of wood. One is wet and sappy and lying in wet ground. The second one is wet wood, wet and sappy wood lying on. The first one is wet and sappy and lying on wet ground. The second one is wet and sappy but lying on dry ground. The third one is dry wood lying on dry ground. And the Buddha says only the third type you can make a fire. So in the same way, somebody who has this desire for lust and desire for sensual pleasures internally, and not withdrawn from, mentally and bodily withdrawn from sensual pleasures, cannot attain enlightenment. And then how the 5 monks left him, and then after that the 5 disciples left him because he started to take 1 meal a day. And then after that, how he struggled and attained enlightenment. When this was said, the Brahmin student Sangarava said to the Blessed One, Master Gotama's striving was unfaltering. Master Gotama's striving was that of a true man, as it should be for an Arahant Sammasambuddha. But how is it, Master Gotama? Are there gods? I'll stop here for a moment. So here, after the Buddha described how the Buddha struggled to attain enlightenment, then this Sangarava, I guess he believed the Buddha, that the Buddha was truly enlightened. Now he's asking whether there are gods. And the Buddha said, it is known to me to be the case, Bharadvaja, that there are gods. But how is this, Master Gotama, that when you are asked, are there gods, you say, it is known to me to be the case, Bharadvaja, that there are gods. If that is so, isn't what you say empty and false? Stop here for a moment. So here when the Buddha said, it is known to me that there are gods, he thought the Buddha probably heard it from somebody. That's why the Buddha says it's known to him The Buddha did not say that I know directly that there are gods. So if that is the case, he says, that means what you said earlier about enlightenment, all that is empty and false. Then the Buddha said, Bharadvaja, when one is asked, are there gods? Whether one answers, there are gods, or it is known to me to be the case that there are gods, a wise man can draw the definite conclusion that there are gods. But why didn't Master Gotama answer me in the first way? It is widely accepted in the world, Bharadvaja, that there are gods. When this was said, the Brahmin student Sangarava said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gotama, Magnificent Master Gotama. Master Gotama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overturned, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. Let Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. The end of the sutta. So here, this is another case of a Brahmin who is quite arrogant about his caste, comes to the Buddha and then is converted by the Buddha and becomes a Buddhist. The next sutta is quite long, so I think I do it tomorrow. We can stop here, and if you have anything to discuss, we can discuss. Which one? That's quite correct to a certain extent. We find when we compare the Majjhima Nikaya and the Nikaya, the Majjhima Nikaya has certain suttas which are very practical for a monk, cultivating the holy life. In that sense, it's quite advanced for quite advanced suttas. But not all. There are some like these. The last few we read is just about the Brahmins who come to argue with the Buddha. But earlier we did come across a certain that had a lot of Dhamma content. In the Digha Nikaya, you also have some which have good Dhamma content. But because Digha Nikaya there are only 34 suttas, so in the 34, some of them don't have so much Dhamma content. So Digha Nikaya is easier to go through in that sense. That's why it's, maybe that's why people say it's more suitable for external ascetics or for lay people. Okay, if there's nothing, we stop here.